Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Backbone Podcast, where common sense still makes sense in a world that is sick and only getting sicker. And as you can tell from the banner here, we are going to give the Trump, Israel, Iran missile fling stuff a rest. It seems that the ceasefire has begun, at least for now. So we're going to get to something more appalling that really could end human history. And it's something that a lot of people have been talking about as of late. And it's the effect of feminism and what it's done to women in general, especially liberal women. As you can tell by the banner here, liberal women today are the unhappiest women in recorded human history. And we have a post here on X from Eve magazine that reads, "Liberal women today are the unhappiest women in recorded human history, despite more equality, opportunity, and rights than ever before." Conversely, conservative women, religious women, are statistically the happiest women in America by every metric, including sexual fulfillment. Now, the question is, why? Why are conservative women happier than liberal women? Well, we'll try to use some common sense here. Let's look at feminism, one of the greatest cancers in all of human history, especially in the Western world. Feminism has sabotaged women's happiness. When little girls used to grow up, when boys were boys and men were men, and little girls were growing up, they always wanted to wear dresses. They always wanted to have little dolls so they can play mommy. And they always dreamed about finding their prince or their knight in, the knight in, what was that? Knight in armor and stuff like that. The Viking on a hill. If you were growing up, if you were as old as I am, you were growing up back in the day, you probably had a mom or an aunt or a cousin who used to read romance novels all the time. And those romance novels were always basically the same. They were pretty campy, but they were always about, a young maiden who is looking for some hunky Viking to save her from, some lord. And there was a beautiful romance, and they ended up happily ever after. Well, today those don't exist, right? Because apparently women don't need men, which is the greatest sham in one of the greatest shams in human history. So women's happiness, especially with the last two generations, is gone. Women, worse off, have flipped the male-female relationship upside down. Men used to be the ones who craved independence, adventure, sexual conquests, danger. That's why we were the ones who bought the fast cars, and we would go skydiving and go surfing and take martial arts and do all those fun things. Because men love adventure and danger. That's what we are. While women would learn how to knit and cook and take care of a home and wait to be mothers. Wait to be wives first and then mothers. Well, according to very recent studies, men today are more likely to seek love, marriage, and kids, while women want the danger, sexual conquests, and the independence. And this is where all of this turmoil is en route, because it's not in a woman's nature to spread her legs around for every guy that comes her way. It's not in a woman's nature to be independent. It's not in a woman's nature to seek danger and adventure. That's not the natural order of things. It's just not how it works. Now, these studies that are coming out, when talking about men seeking love, marriage, and kids more than ever before, that's just not true. It's just happening at a younger age, I believe. Men have always had love. We're the only ones who do. Men have always seek to be married, and because they want to have children. That's the greatest wealth any man on the planet can have, is the extension of his legacy. And to find a virtuous woman who will complete that. But women have been told that they have to be independent, that they have to have a career, that they have to be the boss lady, and they don't have time for being a slave to a man in their home, being a stay-at-home mom, cooking and cleaning, squeezing out, 3 or 4 kids. That's so passé. You're a slave. You don't want to be a slave like your grandmother was or your great-grandmother was. That's the feminist lie. So now you have these women who are in their 40s or mid-40s, late 30s, early 40s, sometimes even mid-40s, who bought the science lie that they can freeze their eggs and they can have a baby anytime they want and they don't need a man. Well, now these women are finding out, and there's article after article after article about this, that the older they get, the less likely these eggs that have been frozen for 10, 15 years won't take. It's not a guarantee that if you freeze your eggs that they will one day develop into a baby. And so now these women are in their 40s, no man, no baby, and they're lonely as shit. Then you have the woman who wants it all. She wants to have the husband and the house and the white picket fence, but she also wants the career. What's wrong with that, you may ask? Well, there's the problem in the bedroom. The sex problem is real because women who work 40, maybe 50 hours a week, come home, they see their kids once in a while because their kids are being raised in nursery schools and preschools now. And they're too tired to satisfy their husbands in the bedroom. They're exhausted because they're not built to work these jobs. The mental strain and the stress that it takes to be a career person. Women are not built for this. Women are emotional beings. They're not logical beings. For men, stress at work was commonplace. I mean, we just go with the flow. And then when they would come home, they would have a cooked meal in front of them, and then they would watch, Walter Cronkite. And then when the lights went out, they would have a little bedroom fun with the wife. Sex is a man's favorite pastime. And now you have wives who are too tired to satisfy these men. And often they become resentful to this fact. It's shame on their part, and they resent their husbands for wanting them as sexual, for seeing them as just a sexual object when they're not. It's a release factor. Sex is fun. Now, you will have feminists or, even like these soy boy guys who say, well, men need to understand things have changed. No. If change is going to come, if society is going to get better, because society's fucked right now, if society is going to get better, it will have to come from women. They're the ones who change the natural order of things. Men aren't the one who, plot all over the place, all over the world, and bitch and moan about how the world isn't great and how they get the shaft all the time. On the contrary, it's the feminist dogma that says that life isn't fair and we're too tired and we're too overworked. And this is because it's not in their nature to be career people. Men have always been the ones to be the guys who went out to work, brought home the paycheck, fed the family, and then were satisfied by their wives afterwards. Men are also pretty agreeable. We tend to go along with whatever a woman may say that they need or want. Back in the old days, if a woman needed a new blender, her husband got it for her. Back in the day, if a woman needed a new station wagon, her husband got it for her. Now women need emotional things. They need space. They need kindness, more kindness, more understanding on your partner. There's a woman at my job who's getting married this weekend. She doesn't tell people she's marrying a man or she's engaged to her future husband. She tells people that she's marrying her partner. That's absurd. How could you label this guy a partner? It's so bland and it's so plastic. There's no feeling there. There's no love there. It's just a formal thing. And she's very happy she's getting engaged and she's very happy she's getting married. But she's not happy enough to tell people she's going to have a husband. No, she has to tell people she's having a partner. And I will guarantee you that she'll be one of these broads that will will keep her maiden name and add this guy's last name. Like Hillary Rodham Clinton, which is the greatest disgrace a woman can do to a guy. And no man should allow that. I didn't when I was married. But that's another reason why liberal women or career women are so fucking unhappy. They're overworked. They're tired. They bought the feminist dogma bullshit that you're equal to men and you can do anything a man can do. And they're paying the price for it. Whether they're married and they're 60% of marriages are ending in divorces, 80% of them are initiated by women. Now the homes are broken up. Kids are being raised in single-family homes. And as we did a podcast last week, has shown that single mothers make awful parents. Mainstream media and liberal politicians and pundits are also to blame for this. They take a huge hit because they promote feminism, especially on the Democrat, liberal, progressive side. A woman doesn't need a man. A woman can do anything she wants. Live your life. Be free. And that sounds all fun and dandy when a girl is 25 and she can bang any guy she wants. But when that chick hits 35, and believe me, 25 to 35 happens overnight. But when she hits that 35 and those eggs become geriatric, that's the medical term, by the way, for that. All of a sudden, those men that they always dreamed about wanting aren't available. Because a high standard, high value, evolved man doesn't want some 35-year-old broad who's had a train run on her. I mean, I live in a small little town. There are a lot of single women here who are about 5 to 10 years younger than I am. and they can, every time they walk into a bar or anywhere they go in this town, they can almost point out one or two guys that they've had in their bedrooms. That's a disgrace. I mean, if you had a high school sweetheart, maybe two. Maybe two. All right, fine, whatever. 10, 12, 15, 20. I mean, how many sweethearts did you have? These girls that go to college today, I mean, I remember when I went to college, girls were free and they did some things, and there was always the slutty campus girls that guys chased. But there was always those girls. There was also those girls who were pretty conservative, for lack of a better term. They had boyfriends. They had a boyfriend, and they'd hook up and this and that. Maybe they dated for a couple of years, and after you graduate from college, you go your separate ways usually. But at least they weren't being, they didn't have a train run on them. And the vast minority were the girls who were fucking all the time. Now it's the vast majority. I mean, you ask any of these 22-year-old girls how many guys that they have had, and they laugh. And a lot of these girls love the fact that they've been recorded doing this. That I can never understand. How can you let yourself be recorded? Bent over, cheeks spread, taking it and just, oh, hey, listen, it happens. Hey, he was in it. I was into it. It seemed like a good idea at the time. You don't have any morals. Feminism has destroyed virtue and morals. And I used to always think that it had to be a man thing. Men were the ones who had to change it. But now I've realized, in looking at these studies and reading these texts and reading a few books about it too, men can't do it. This has to be the conscious decision of women. Women have to change. Women have to go back to their nature. Because everything is now beginning to fall apart in this great society we call Western civilization. And it started pretty late. I mean, once the Protestant Reformation happened, all these people became Baptists and evangelicals and Calvinists. And Calvin was a brilliant man, but he couldn't replace Catholicism, of course. But Protestantism is I mean, you have to be a mental midget to be a Protestant. They're weak, they're feeble, and it just doesn't promote masculinity. And this also helped feminism take root and have its grip, especially on America and on American women, and how it's ruined American women. It has destroyed and devastated marriages. Women want to wait so they can keep their identities longer. So what happens? Men today are finding, well, not all men, but a good amount of men are finding easy sex. Again, these girls who are 22, 23 years old are beginning to live with guys. So you take away the reason for marriage, because why marry the cow when you're getting the milk for free? And I'll give you another story. I knew a guy, we'll call him Corey. He's about 30 years old. He asked me my opinion about the situation that came up around this time last year, where he met this girl, and she's very pretty, but she's been around the block. She's 28 years old. She wants to hook up with this guy, Corey. She wants to date him. She likes him. They've been going out for about a month. She asks him to move in. Corey asks me, what do you think I should do? And I says, well, what's the problem? What's to think about? I mean, a month, I wouldn't move in with a woman after a month. But he goes, well, she's lived with 4 guys previous since the age of 19. So this girl from the age of 19 to 28 has lived with 4 guys. Now, you know that there have been about 3 or 4 guys in between each breakup, maybe more. And you know what happens if you've ever lived with a woman. You know what happens when you're living with a woman. You're fucking in the kitchen, you're banging in the shower, you're doing it left, right, and center. You're doing it all the time. So she's been ran through. Not once, not twice, 4 times. And that's what the guys she's lived with. So what's this guy expecting? You're gonna make an honest woman of this broad and bring your legacy into the world through this vessel? Feminism tells a woman you can do whatever you want. Live with a guy, you don't have to marry him. Marriage is just a piece of paper, it's just a license. This is what happens when you take religion and God out of things. Nothing is sacred, it's just a piece of paper, it's just a license. You can get a license fishing and a driver's license. Marriage is the same thing. Now, marriage has been devastated by this. And when marriage is devastated by this, and this is specifically for white people, it undermines childbirth. You don't have as many babies as are coming into the world, especially white babies. You also have the problem of, if you do have a baby and you're a single mom, those kids most likely, because you're working, are in childcare. Now, childcare is a terrible place to have your child raised. You're allowing a stranger who's being paid $15 an hour to do the most important job in human history. That's raise children. Childcare is where discipline is lax. And this is why we have an epidemic of asshole children running around. We have an epidemic of childhood obesity. We have an epidemic of bullying, whether it's cyberbullying or in-your-face bullying. Kids are pricks today. Why? Because they're not being disciplined and raised by fathers in the home. This is not an accident. It's common sense. If you don't believe me, look the statistics up yourself. Marriage is being destroyed. Childbirths are being destroyed. And when there is a child being brought in the home, that kid is being raised by some, 19-year-old, pothead who's making $15 an hour, who doesn't know her ass from her elbow. And they're destroying these children from the jump. There's also this theory, and I can understand it in certain parts of the country, but there's also the 2-income trap. Where husbands and wives both work. They both work long hours. They have their kids being raised, again, whether it be in child care facilities or in schools, which are both nightmares. And these people work hard not to give their children a better life, but they fall into the 2-income trap because they want life's luxuries. They want the big house, they want the fancy car, they want the jewelry, they want the vacations, they want all this shit. So they sacrifice raising their children properly, so they can own another Nissan. How much sense does that make? And this is the problem with white Christian heterosexual males too. We love our toys. We love the new camera. We love the new, television set. We love all that crap. And we work hard for it, but we sacrifice seeing our children, raising our children for it. We've forgotten what is important in life. It's not the fucking car. It's not the goddamn TV. It's not how many apps you have where you can watch movies endlessly and zone out in front of that television set. It's not these goddamn fucking video games. It's your kids, man. It's making sure that you're the leader of the house. It's God, it's Jesus, it's man, it's woman, it's children. That's always been the natural order of things. And it's been like that since the dawn of time. And it's worked since the dawn of time. It got us here. And all of a sudden, in the 1920s, Protestant men said, let's give this feminism shit a try. Feminism has even now gotten into sports in a very diabolical way, right? Because feminism always attached itself to liberal progressive identities, right? Homosexuality, interracial marriage, all that shit. So now college sports, like stuff like Title IX, has ended many male sports in some colleges. It's also promoted these sick mental midgets who are terrible male athletes to identify as women, which is insanity, and participate in women's sports. And it's destroying women's sports. It's destroying sports for girls in high school and college. And people say, well, they identify as a woman. Well, we have to respect that. No, we don't respect that because they're mentally challenged. They're mentally ill. It hits every phase of society. And of course, the ultimate horror of all this, the final nail in the coffin, is the emasculating of men. Men have been terrified to speak up. It's better to be a pussy than to speak up or mouth off. Because if you do, you will face charges of harassment, of chauvinism. You could lose your job. You could have restraining orders put on you. It could ruin your life. And again, that is the Anglo-American Protestant failure, at least in the United States, of this whole feminist dogma. The law has totally turned against men, totally turned against God and the natural order of things, and it's destroyed society. I don't know when this is going to stop or when this is going to turn around, if it will ever turn around. But the more and more we celebrate the feminist elite like Oprah Winfrey and Michelle Obama, the more and more these regular women in society are going to say, that could be me. Now, the difference between, Jane down the block and, Katie Couric is that they have clout, they have a voice. And these bitches think that they can go on TV, the radio, or write an article in the newspaper and say what's best for women. The problem is that a majority of women in this country don't have power. Feminists do, but not the average gal. And feminists influence liberals, as well as some conservatives, to conform to a feminist message. And this is the problem that we're facing today. And now, these women now, millennial women, Gen Z women, even women my age, Gen Xers, are starting to see that when you hit the wall or when you see the wall right before you hit it, that they fucked up. Now they're lonely, they're depressed, There's more women that are suffering from alcoholism and drug abuse more than ever. They're suffering from depression more than ever. They take some sort of prescription drug, which also will destroy any ability to have a normal kid. They pop these birth control pills like they're juju beads because they want to have, indiscriminate sex all over the place, which destroys your, which could destroy your ability to make normal children. And we sit here and we wonder why we have these chicks with purple hair and tattoos all over the place and piercings all over their face. They're fucked up. They're miserable because they bought this manufactured idea. And feminism wasn't brought up it wasn't created by women. Now, feminism was created by men. This was a total psyop. Because women aren't smart enough to think of things like this. This is a total psyop that is happening. Feminism is the MK Ultra of for women. So the feminist dogma has thus far destroyed at least 2.5 generations of women, and the boomer women, not necessarily. You have the Nancy Pelosi's, that you have, like I said, some of the Oprahs. I don't know if Oprah might. No, I don't think Oprah's a boomer. I mean, she might be a boomer. The Hillary Clintons, but these broads, they married powerful people. So they spun that marriage as a business into gold. The feminist women of today, the Zs and the millennials, they haven't been able to do that. They've chased away any man that will have them, and the men that do want them, they're not attracted to, because they look at these guys and say, how could you want me? I fucked like 75 guys. What do you see in me? You must be weak, a weak simp. You don't have any values. And they're right. So there's my rant on feminism. Now, conservative women, why are conservative women happier? Well, are they happier? There are studies that say that they are. Now, according to the Institute of Family Studies, all these crazy numbers came out. And I don't know how they get these numbers, but the findings that were conducted in February of 2025 reveal that 37% of conservative women and 28% of moderate women age 18 to 40 reported being completely satisfied with their lives. That's not the greatest number in the world. If you went to school and you got a 37 on a test, your teachers basically thought you were retarded. So 37% of conservative women ain't that great. But the numbers for liberal women are disastrous. 12% of liberal women are almost 3 times more likely than conservative women to experience loneliness multiple times a week. 29% compared to 11. (29% compared to 11). And you have to, again, it goes, you're buying a dogma. You're buying an idea from somebody you don't know. You've fallen into this trap of this whole thing called feminism that is bullshit. Brad Wilcox, a sociology professor at the University of Virginia, told Fox Digital News, we've seen, and in quote, we've seen in the research that conservative women tend to be more likely to embrace a sense of agency and to have the sense that they are not in any way the victim of a large structural realities or forces. He added, they're also likely to catastrophize about public events and concerns, also less likely, I should say, and more likely to think of themselves as captains of their own fate. What does that mean? Well, they have a religious standing. 40% of liberal women report being single, 31% were married, Wilcox found. Among conservative women, 33% reported being single, while 51% were married. The study finds that conservative women again take the lead for religious attendance, with over half reporting to attend church weekly, compared to just 12% of liberal women. Liberal women are either agnostic or atheists or Wiccans or whatever the fuck else they look into. They study crystals. So what are the two factors? Well, it's marriage and church attendance account for about half of the happiness gap. Liberal women are less likely to be integrated into core American institutions like marriage, like religion. These institutions lend meaning, they have direction, and they have solidarity. They tend to put solidarity into a woman's life. One of the other things that has destroyed these women today is social media. Social media has probably been catastrophic to how women think today. Social media has led to depression, suicides among younger women, and liberal women who tend to spend more time online than conservative women might be consuming too much of this doom and gloom content. They take way too seriously politics. We've heard these crazy stories that liberal women won't date men who don't believe in their same, who don't believe the same way they do politically. That's insane. That's absolutely insane. Conservative women are more likely to be married. They're more likely to be religious. They're more likely to attend religious services, which also means that they're not as lonely. Because even if the husband's not around, their children are around. And if the children aren't around, they turn to God. Liberal women report less connection to any of these traditional institutions, and thus they have a higher rate of loneliness, dissatisfaction, and they go the demonic route. They turn to drugs, they turn to alcohol, they turn to slutting themselves out. They look for false validation from guys who give two shits about them. So they go out with a free lunch shirt on and they give it up to anybody they can find. Trust me, I see it. I live it. Okay, there's a lot of women out there who I want to thank their fathers for being weak and stupid. And I'm sure you do too. Now, Family Studies report says, and I quote, any efforts to bridge this ideological gap in young women's emotional well-being will seemingly require not only a change in thinking, but also a renewal in young liberal women's connection to America's core institutions, which are faith and family. Bingo. The problem with that is, if women are going to turn back to core institutions, and these aren't just American core institutions, these are Western core institutions. This is not American, this is not Anglo. They're the ones who ruined it. This was from Western civilization, the Greeks and the Romans, who spread it all along with Catholicism. The problem here is that women are going to have to submit. They're going to have to admit they're wrong, which they never like to do anyway. They're going to have to change their ways. They're going to have to repent for all the damn sins that they've done. And they're going to have to hope that they can find these young men who have been completely decimated by the liberal media that promotes interracial and gay sex and just Sex in the City shit. And I'm going to do a podcast about Sex in the City because that show is what ruined women big time back in the late 90s. But women are going to have to turn back to the faith and family tradition, the faith and family connection to greatness. I don't know if that will happen in my lifetime. I hope it does. It may or may not. But this is all on women now, not on men. Unfortunately, men, this is one thing that men cannot cure. We can do almost anything, but we can't convince women to be women again. All right. Thank you again for watching. Please like, subscribe, comment, and share. Be careful out there, my friends. Satan is always busy. We took a day off from politics to talk about some culture. Be a man, have a backbone, because masculinity and common sense are worth standing up for. We'll see you later.